Hello, this is Jay McGregor. I appreciate you stopping by to review my videos today, and we're actually going to be discussing and going over many different ways of selecting data. I'm actually going to create a series of videos on this particular topic because it's vast. They really have put a lot of effort into this. Take everything that I had in Terra Model and increase it by a factor of 2 or 3. So we're really going to be discussing a lot of different areas, or excuse me, ways of selecting. So go to the Home tab and you come over to the far right. You've got this category called Selection. This is where all the different commands to select different data. Now, also in these commands, there are many different subtle settings that you can use. It's marvelous, and we're actually going to go do quite a few videos on selecting data. Great. All right. So right off the bat, we're going to jump into one that I use quite often. It's called Select by Layer. Okay. So I can go Select by Layer. Great. I can slide down until I see the particular layer name and then just check the box to say I want to grab and select everything on that layer. But my question to you is, what if you didn't know the layered name? What if I did not know the specific layer name, but I could see the data? Well, let's do this another way. If you go to select by layer, one of the excellent ways of selecting is if you can see an entity on the particular layer that you're interested in, just merely go pick the entity. I'll pick this piece of text, and poof, it grabs everything on the layer of the entity that I picked. I didn't have to take the time to actually go to the properties, find the layer name, either remember it or write it down. I'm stupid, so I would have to write it down. So what we're going to do is, given that capability, I can pick that entity, I can pick another entity, I can pick as many different layers just by simply picking a particular entity that I visually see, and it grabs and selects that data. So that's a marvelous command. I use it probably, I don't know, guessing 40% of the time as I'm working in TBC. The next thing about selection, very subtle. What I really want you to understand is when you've got data ghosted or highlighted or selected, there is an integer number down at the lower right corner. This particular integer number is the number of total objects that you have in the current selection that's highlighted. Now let me also back up just a second on when you select data. Let's look at this. I'm going to zoom into this one line. Pick that. Okay. Well, look at the color and look at the width of the line. How do I control that? Because see, when the software is shipped and installed on your computer, that color and that line width is not the default. So let's actually go talk about that. Under File, come down to Options. Very important command that whenever you do install another version of TBC, you typically need to go check the options. The options are the controls that set up everything for TBC as the system software. It's not setting up the particular options for a particular project. That's controlled by the template. So there are options that control the entire software. There are templates, which I'm actually going to have a training video on templates, creating, controlling your templates that you use when you start a new project. But that's a different topic. We're talking about the options command, so I'm going to go to that. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe when the particular TBC software is installed on a new computer, the highlight color I think is orange, but the big deal is the highlight line width. It's either set to 2 or 3. So I'm going to set it to 3. So, okay, highlight color and highlight line width. Fine, whatever. Now I'm going to pick that line. See, if I pick another one, so it's orange, but it's pretty thin. Okay. One of the major things that I recommend that you look at whenever you do install a new version of Business Center is you do take the time to go to File, Options. The biggie is increasing the highlight line width. Whether you change these colors up here, I don't care. I'm going to discuss them a little bit, but this is the biggie, increasing the highlight line width. See, I'm going to up it to 10. Okay. I am going to change the highlight color. Now these colors, this total personal preference, whatever blows your dress up. I particularly am going to go to the highlight color yellow at the top left corner. One of the other ones that I do recommend that you change is the visual snap color. The way the software is shipped, it's shipped to one of these dark green colors. Okay. I that color is really, well, anyway, I just don't agree with it. Okay. So the highlight line color, but increasing the highlight line width is of major importance. If I say okay to that, and now I go pick a line, oh, okay, all right. I definitely see the color. That's great. But huge difference is the line width. Okay. Highlight line width. So that's the big predominant change that I recommend somebody use. Also, I will say if I go draw a polyline right quick, see it's hard to see. See the green squares that look like they're popping up when I get close? Well, oh, okay. Well, again, this is a major change that I do recommend. File, going back to options. I do recommend that you go to the visual snap color, and I do recommend you pick a very bright, visible color, big time. So I'm going to set mine to the brightest yellow you have. When I say okay and I go create a polyline, see, that makes a huge difference on being able to actually see the visual snaps that are available to you. So into the, under the options command, there are a lot of different settings. I will have another training video on the various options or settings that I use and change under the options command, but that's not part of this training. I wanted to show you that simple change. When we start to grab and select stuff, it's in a brighter color and it's much, much, much thicker. So now getting back to the selection control. So if we do go back to select by layer, which we've already found out, I can typically just turn on the check box next to the layer if I know the particular layer name, or the real big improvement and cool, if I just know that I can see it. I want everything selected on the layer of this one thing that I pick. Pick it. Poof, you got it. I want these lot numbers. I don't have to know the layer name. Pick it. So, ladies and gentlemen, select by layer is probably one of the top 2 or 3 most widely used selections that I see, and also the ones that I use quite a bit. So that's a great way to start. I am going to go back and I am going to talk about base selection control. Well, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, picking an entity, if you just want to pick one at a time, pick and pick and pick. Well, now, wait a minute. It's only highlighting one. If you want to stiffly select individual entities, you can press and hold the control key. Now, you do have to pick one line first before you press and hold control and start picking this one, this one, this one, picking the individual pieces. Let me show you if you inadvertently, you haven't picked anything yet, but you think that you are going to start by pressing and holding the control key and pick one entity. That's not what you typically want, because if you press and hold control and then you pick one entity, it automatically does what's called select all in the background. And that's not your norm. There is definitely a command called select all. If you're going to do it, that's the way that I highly recommend you do it. But in using the control key, you have to pick one entity first. Okay, I got one. Then you press and hold control, and now you can pick the onesie twosies entity. You can also, if you inadvertently, oh, I didn't want these two out here. As long as you press and hold control, you can pick a highlighted entity to unselect it or unhighlight it. All right? So that's the base way, I guess you might call it. Some people do, some people don't. But anyway, selecting individual pieces, parts, entities, you pick one entity first, then you press and hold down the control key, and you can start individually picking whatever lines, pieces of text, any particular objects. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, great. Well, the reason I wanted to back up from select by layer, that's the one that I start with, is select by layer. When I'm wanting to move something, I'm wanting to copy, I'm wanting to change its elevation. Well, it's normally on a particular layer of data. All right. So in the light of picking onesie twosie entities, pick one, hold down the control, and pick. You can also, again, I'm going to show you one more time. Several people don't know that if you picked or selected the wrong thing, dadgummit, I didn't want this line. Well, as long as you have the whole control key down, you pick the highlighted entity and it will unhighlight or remove those entities from the selection group. All right, great. So that's singular or individual entities. The next way that's built in the mouse to select data is to pick and hold the left mouse key on the mouse and make a rectangle. Gentlemen, ladies, boys and girls, when you press and hold the left mouse key on the mouse and you move the mouse from left to right, it makes a rectangle. Well, when you lift your finger up, whatever was totally encompassed inside of that window is grabbed or selected. Now, this piece of text wasn't totally inside, but part of it, when you're picking a piece of text, it doesn't have to be fully enclosed. Just as part or piece of it touches the window, it's going to grab that. But when I am selecting objects, lines, line strings, circles, doesn't make any difference. You normally, if you're going to do it with a mouse, you have to pick and create a window, and that window or rectangle has to be fully encompassing that entity. Okay. Well, watch that line right there. Let's scrutinize this again. If I pick and hold this rectangle, but my rectangle touches or crosses the line, when you select with a solid rectangle, that's called select by window, and it only grabs the data that is fully enclosed inside the rectangle. It didn't grab that line because that line was not fully enclosed by the rectangle. Now, ladies and gentlemen, another way of selecting with the mouse is if you press and hold the left mouse button and you move from right to left. You see the rectangle, ladies and gentlemen, the rectangle changes from a solid rectangle to a dashed rectangle. When you have a dashed rectangle, that is called selection by crossing, meaning it will grab any entity that's in the window, but it will also grab any entity that touches or crosses the rectangle. Oh, it got all of those. So When you're doing the left mouse key, are you drawing the rectangle from left to right, and it is a solid rectangle? Or are you picking and holding the left mouse key? Are you drawing it from right to left and it's dashed to use what's called the crossing selection? Any entity that crosses that box, poof, you got it. You can even, ladies and gentlemen, use the crossing by making a very, 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 very thin, again, anything that touches that thin box, that thin rectangle, poof, you got it if it's dashed. Okay, all right. So the selection by layer is very widely used. Also, picking the particular entities by picking one, holding down the control key, and then continuing to pick them. That is the next one that's widely used quite often. And then the third is either selecting by a solid rectangle, which is, quote, select by window, or picking and holding the left mouse key and going right to left. It is a dashed rectangle. That changes it to what is called select by crossing. Anything that touches the box, poof, you got it. Okay, lovely. Now, in going through, those are the base ways of selecting data in many CAD packages, not just in Trimble Business Center. What we are going to do is to look at several of these, but selecting by layer, or picking individual entities by pressing and holding the control, or just using the mouse itself, right mouse key, and either make a solid rectangle from left to right, or a dashed rectangle from right to left. The difference is select by window when it's solid and select by crossing when it's a dashed rectangle. Lovely. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So the first video on selection control is basically what I call the top three. Select by layer, select individual entities just by picking them with the control key, and select just using the left mouse button and making a rectangle, either solid or dashed. Okay, great. I hope you enjoy the different selection controls that there are in these series of videos, because we are going to go from simple to advanced. Let me just tell you that. And also, sometimes very subtle. Have a great day. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you very much. Hello, thanks very much for reviewing my training video. I do hope that it was helpful for you. My name is Jay McGregor, and I would like to tell you about my background and experience. If you've already heard this, please close the video at this point. Back in 1987, I began working with +3 Software, and that company is the one that started writing and developing the program called TerraModel. In 1988, when TerraModel started shipping, myself and Bill Denny became the training department for that particular software package. That progressed until Spectra Physics bought us, and Spectra Physics changed their name to Spectra Precision, and in 1996, Spectra Precision started developing and creating the first machine control system that they were doing was called Blade Pro 3D. That was being controlled by the geodometer total station, tracking the 360-degree prism, so you could get fine grading out of the Blade Pro 3D system. And for that first year, myself and another gentleman in my department made all of the models for the machine control that was sold before they started letting the client start making their models for themselves. In 2011, Trimble created the Trimble Certified Trainer Program, and I became a certified trainer on Trimble Business Center back then. And since then, I have been training on the software and using it for 3D blade machine control and any software, hardware system out there. I can create 3D models for all of the Trimble and the TopCon systems. I have also been training since that time on real world projects to train the clients and the dealers' clients, whatever their software and project demands were. And I still continue to do that type of training, 3D data prep, and technical support even to today. I do hope that you enjoyed hearing about this. And if you have any more questions, I would definitely love to hear from you. My email is at the bottom. It's jmcgregor@bellsouth.net. Love to hear you and hope to see you in the future. Have a great day. Thank you very much.